This section is going to cover the EOS Playback status display in greater detail. Now, if you remember, this is tab number 2, and this is one of the displays that is always open. Now, in its default state, the vast majority of the display is a cue list, with one small section at the bottom giving you some information about one of your fader pages and where those faders may happen to be or how they're configured. So let's take a look at this default mode in greater detail. Specifically, we're looking at the cue list, and this portion is broken up into columns with all of the relevant information about your cues. The column all the way to the left are my cue numbers. The next column in is actually a large column, and the entire column is timing, but it's actually broken up into subcolumns, one each for intensity up, intensity down, focus, color, beam, and overall cue duration. So as you're doing timing on your cues, you'll see all of the individual timing there. The next column right in the middle, which is labeled flags, is where you would see some text indicators show up telling you that there are additional things that may be happening or have been assigned to your cue. And these letters stand for the following things. M is for marking information, B is for block, A is for assert, P is for preheat, and the little a over the little f is for all fade. And we will be covering these in greater detail in different sections, but just know that this is where the indicator would show up if any of those attributes are applied to one of your cues. Next to flags, we do have a column called attributes divided up into subcolumns. This is where you would see things like your follow and hang, your link, loop, curve, and rate. Next to that is a label, and then finally all the way at the right is a column for external links if there are anything that this cue might be executing, like a macro or something else that might be tied to that cue would show up in the external links column. Now, using your mouse, you can resize these columns just like you can any normal spreadsheet program, so you can determine how much information is displayed in each of these columns. Now, to get to the other formats of this display, I'm just going to use the format key the same way I would on any other display. So I want to make sure that this display is active. And I hit format, and the next format you'll see is actually a split cue list format, so I can actually look at two different cue lists on this display. One of the nice things about this is that if you notice up in the upper left-hand portion of each of these cue lists, there's a little open padlock. And if you use your mouse, you can close that padlock, and that cue list will stay permanently on this display. At the bottom of this display, again, is one row of fader playback information. So on either one of my cue list displays, the bottom will have one row of fader information. The final format is a split format that is half cue list and half fader display, or half fader information. So what we see again is a condensed version, or a shortened version rather, of a cue list. And the bottom half of the display shows me fader pages in rows, and then each of the faders across in columns, so I can see how a lot of my faders are configured using that display. That is looking at the playback status display in greater detail on the EOS.